Hey everyone, so there's going to be spoilers from patch 2.1, so if you haven't played through it yet, you may want to click away. Okay, so now that we have that out of the way, we can jump into today's topic. So, Scaramouche. Is it me, or does anyone feel like he's been acting super sus? Ever since I finished the 2.1 Archon Quest, I just can't shake the feeling that there's something else at play, a hidden agenda of sorts that we have yet to hear about. From the way he reacted upon seeing the gnosis to the whole Signora situation, it definitely raises a lot of red flags. While we'll dive deeper into this later, everything seems to point to Scaramouche betraying the Tsaritsa. Well, betray is a strong word. Maybe a better phrase would be turning his back on her? Anyways, I know it sounds crazy, and it could be, but hold your horses because I think there's quite a bit of evidence to back up this theory. So let's do a quick recap of the relevant points in the 2.1 Archon Quest. Forgive me, but I'll have to recap this sort of out of order just because it makes more sense to do so please bear with me. During the questline, we meet with Kokomi on Watatsumi Island and do a bunch of rando things for her. Later, we learn that the Resistance Army has been using delusions to become more powerful. However, the use of these delusions has dire consequences, causing Resistance members to age more quickly and in some cases die. Rip Tepe. Kokomi then bans and confiscates all the delusions and tells us that these delusions are being manufactured and distributed by the Fatui. Based on the intel reports from the Resistance, we find out the location of where these delusions are being made and go to confront the Fatui. At what I'll call the factory, we run into Scaramouche, who reveals that this entire operation was engineered to create a civil war to destabilize Inazuma. It's during this conversation that we are overcome with the rage and anger from the Tataragimi harvested from the crystal marrow at the factory. As we pass out, we see Yaemiko approaching Scaramouche. We later find out that she exchanges the gnosis for our safety, which is totally a fair trade, right? Anyways, fast forward a bunch in the questline and we get to the scene where we confront Signora. She basically confirms everything that Scaramouche has said, and in our anger, we challenge her to a duel and face her fiery wrath, in which we come out as the victor. In accordance with Inazuman law, the Raiden Shogun descends and yeets Signora out of existence with the Musono Hitotachi. And that's it, right? Signora is dead, Scaramouche ferries off the gnosis to the Tsaritsa, and everyone's happy. Well, not really, because the whole sequence of events is extremely suspect. We know that Signora is not dumb. In fact, she proves herself to be incredibly strategic and cunning, which we've seen from her stunts in Mondstadt and Liyue. This is why her whole meeting with the Raiden Shogun was so suspect, especially since we now know that at the time of that conversation, Scaramouche was already in possession of the gnosis. So why does she meet with the Raiden Shogun to begin with? Well, that's because she was completely in the dark about the gnosis. I believe she specifically requested an audience with the Shogun to broker a deal in exchange for the gnosis, similar to the arrangement that she made with Zhongli. There's simply no other good explanation for this meeting. I mean, if we think about it, then if the gnosis was secured, then why even bother holding an audience with the Raiden Shogun? What else is there to talk about? If you look at the situation objectively, the Fatui have everything they could possibly want in Inazuma. They've infiltrated 2 out of the 3 commissions in the region. They're basically running amok on every island in the archipelago, and they're currently able to create delusions en masse with the supplies they are receiving from the Inazumans. So at the end of the day, it just doesn't make sense for Signora to walk in and jeopardize their operations by speaking with the Raiden Shogun. I know what some of you are thinking, oh, but what if Scaramouche forgot to tell her? Well, that's pretty unlikely considering that at least 3 days had passed between our meeting with Scaramouche and our final confrontation with Signora. 3 days. That certainly would have been plenty of time for the Scaramouche to inform the Tsaritsa and the other harbingers that the gnosis was secured. So, if Scaramouche has a gnosis and hasn't told the harbingers about this, then what is he doing? Well, I think he's going to betray or turn his back on the Tsaritsa. What he exactly plans to do is a bit unclear, but there are hints here and there that point to this theory. At the end of the Archon Quest, Yaemiko reveals that Scaramouche was a prototype puppet used to test the technology or alchemy that A uses to create the Raiden Shogun. Yae also reveals that this puppet was meant to be discarded but was ultimately spared since A felt bad. With no doubt, this would create some sense of animosity within Scaramouche, knowing that he was brought into this world only to be tossed aside and forgotten about. I think this sense of not belonging is what initially brought him to the Fatui. According to Yae, After joining the Fatui, the power that was within him was unsealed and enhanced by Dottore. From this, it would seem that Scaramouche may be on a similar power level to that of A, if not even more powerful from his enhancements. That being said, it seems a bit too coincidental that he was a creation of the Electro Archon and is in now possession of that very gnosis. But it doesn't stop there. We need to talk about his behavior as well. In general, when we've met Scaramouche in both the Unreconciled Stars event and the 2.1 Archon Quest, he's always been quite composed, a little cuckoo and angsty, but nothing outrageous. This stands in stark contrast with how he was acting with Yae. According to Yae, he was begging for her to hand off the gnosis to him. This seems a bit strange if you ask me, considering how he's interacted with us in the past. Even Signora and Child seem pretty calm when picking up the gnosis from Venti and Zhongli. To me, this is uncharacteristic behavior that is an indication that there are other forces at play here, and specifically I'm referring to Scaramouche's own plans for the gnosis. But that still doesn't quite prove that he is going to betray the Tsaritsa. For more evidence of that, we have to go back to the Unreconciled Stars event. And I just want to say this really quick, I haven't played through this questline as I joined Genshin during Albeda's release, so a lot of the information I've gathered here is from playthroughs I've seen on Twitch and YouTube. So if you haven't played through these quests, you may want to reference the wiki or playthroughs. Also, for the sake of time, I'm not going to summarize the questline, but I'm only referencing the ending of the quest since it's the only relevant part to this theory. Anyways, at the end of the event, the traveler runs into Scaramouche, who reveals that he's seen the truth about the universe and that, quote, "The stars, the sky, it's all a gigantic hoax, a lie," end quote. Now, it's never revealed exactly what he's referring to, but it's most likely in reference to Celestia. And there are a lot of lore videos and channels about Celestia, so I encourage you guys to check them out because this topic is super fascinating. Anyways, shortly after this is said, Scaramouche questions the intentions of the Jester, also number one of the Fatui Harbingers, for sending him on this assignment. He says, quote, "What was the Jester thinking? He must have had some inkling of what we might discover on this mission. Would it really have been so difficult to give me a little forewarning? Or maybe he just wanted to give me a fright." End quote. This quote is particularly significant to me because it indicates to me that the Jester and possibly the Tsaritsa question Scaramouche's dedication to the movement. It sounds like they sent him to the Fallen Stars on purpose, knowing that he would discover this in the hopes that this would bolster his devotion to the Tsaritsa. But I think they miscalculated. I think it had the opposite effect in that it actually made him doubt the Tsaritsa. And again, we don't know exactly what he sees, but whatever it was, it sounds like it made him question the nature of his reality. And I think that's where the rift between him and the Tsaritsa begins to grow. Whatever he saw, it must have been so powerful and so groundbreaking that it raises doubts within him on whether or not he can trust the Tsaritsa to weather the storm. But then this raises the question, what is Scaramouche planning from here on out? And I see three possible outcomes. The first possibility is that Scaramouche may harness the power of the gnosis to take his vengeance on his creator, A. Just from our few interactions with him, it's pretty obvious that he is an angry person, and I think a lot of that animosity may stem from A tossing him aside and forgetting about him. By taking his revenge on A and overthrowing her, he could ascend to Electro Archon, proving that he is more worthy of that position than her. If you think about it, this could be the perfect moment to strike since A is at her weakest due to the fact that she's currently rewiring the Raiden Shogun. However, I guess a counterpoint here would be that he wouldn't necessarily need the gnosis to take vengeance against A. Also, I don't see Scaramouche caring much for the title of Archon since he has such little love for Teyvat and the creatures that inhabit it. Lastly, this theory doesn't take into account whatever he discovered about Celestia, so to me this is probably the least reliable theory. The second theory is that Scaramouche sees the Tsaritsa as incapable of taking on Celestia, so he plans on doing it himself with the gnosis in hand. As we theorized earlier, I think that the Tsaritsa and the Jester are aware that Scaramouche has doubts about their cause. I think after everything he's learned from the Unreconciled Stars event, Scaramouche may see the Tsaritsa as incapable of facing Celestia. Because of his own pride and his own capabilities, he probably sees himself as far more superior than that of all the beings in Teyvat Teyvat and plans to take the battle to Celestia himself. Now, I don't know if it's just me, but I see standing up against Celestia as a selfless act to save the planet, and I'm not sure if Scaramouche really cares enough to do something like this, but it's a possibility, I guess. My third theory is that Scaramouche is planning on using the gnosis to resonate with Celestia and join them. This is by far the most troubling outcome, but I can definitely see it happening. Scaramouche, as I stated earlier, doesn't really see himself as part of Teyvat. He doesn't seem to care for any of the living beings in the world. To him, they're completely expendable and unworthy. And I think this kind of attitude kind of aligns with Celestia, as they have had no issue in the past with completely eradicating civilizations. Although again, there are issues with that theory in that we haven't exactly seen Celestia in action yet, and I'm not sure if MiHoYo would want to bring them this early on in the story. Either way, the implications of this are terrifying. Again, these are just some of my theories and predictions as to what could possibly happen. I'm curious as to what you guys think. Let me know down in the comments below. Okay, so we aren't quite done yet, because with Scaramouche's betrayal, we as a traveler will most likely need to intervene. But what I find more interesting will be the Tsaritsa's response. Not only does she get betrayed, but she also loses one of her beloved harbingers, Signora, in the process. So she won't take this news lightly, and I expect a swift and strong response from her. Again, there's so many different actions that could be taken here, but I'm gonna stick with the most likely possibility. As expected, the Tsaritsa will most likely send the harbingers to respond to the situation. Since Signora is dead and Scaramouche has betrayed the Fatui, this means that only 9 of the harbingers will be available to respond to the situation. I suspect that the Tsaritsa will send 2 harbingers to respond to a situation of this severity. But who would she send? If we look at this objectively, we know that the Tsaritsa currently possesses the Animo and Geo gnosis. This effectively means that the harbingers operating in those regions are currently free for reassignment. With Signora out of the picture, I think it would be highly likely that Child will be dispatched. But again, with the severity of the situation, I think the Tsaritsa would want to send an additional, more senior harbinger as backup. However, this is harder to predict, as I don't think the Tsaritsa would want to displace her other harbingers, who are most likely hard at work on confiscating the gnosis from the other archons. From a proximity point of view, it would follow that she would send the harbinger currently assigned in Sumeru to help. But that's just my suspicion as to how the Fatui would respond. Let me know what y'all think down in the comments below. And yeah, that's pretty much it for my crazy theory. I'm probably wrong, but I just like to think out of the box sometimes, and I thought this was a really fun thought that I had. If you guys enjoyed this theory, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I also stream on Twitch sometimes, so if you want to check me out there, please check out the links in the description box below, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!